History, Aliens and Conspiracies. This was the ambitious debut of Scott McNicol. With his book, The Alpine Protocol, Scott has been always passionate about storytelling since a young age, influenced by his grandmother's great love for books. Though he has ideas for stories for years, he only recently started writing professionally, as he finally found that flame inside of him that gave him the drive to try. His experience highlights that perseverance in the end is what moves us from a mere idea to a finished book. Join us to learn about this inspiring story. Welcome to Writing Inspiration with Markee Books. Hello, Scott. How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Enjoying my Sunday. And you?
Nice, relaxing Sunday.
Happy to hear that. So, Scott, you recently debuted as an author. How did this passion start? What makes you want to write a book?
Uh, for pretty much as long as I've known, I've always really enjoyed reading. My grandma was actually the first person. She read 6 or 7 books a week. It seemed like was always going to the library and would always take me with her. And after that, and then I kept listening to more and more stories. Eventually, I kept getting ideas for stories and started feeling like I should probably start putting some down since they're kind of sticking with me, and slowly built up to it.
Okay, so you tried like writing professionally from a young age, or you only started recently?
Professionally, I started recently. For a good while, I would always start stories, but then I'd kind of have trouble pursuing them further, and then I guess eventually, finally, things started to click, and I actually started pushing further and onwards, and actually knocking out stories.
Okay, okay. So tell me, how long did it take for you to get published?
Um, the whole process, I want to say, took roughly a year of. Well, this book initially I wrote the story out, and I felt like that was all I was going to do. Was now the idea is out of my head because I had been thinking about this plot for a little over a year, and then I was started wondering to myself if it's even a good story. So I shared it with a few of my friends that read, and they really enjoyed it. So I thought, well, if they enjoyed it, I should go the next step further and start sending out my manuscript. And I got a few interested publishers, excuse me, that they wanted me to put a little bit of my money into the mix with them to get it going. And that's when I started realizing maybe I should actually do this professionally. And so it kind of just snowballed from putting my thought down on paper to more and more.
Okay, okay. How long did it take you to finish your first book?
Overall, I think it took about a year and a half. As I said, the first one I was mostly just kind of throwing the story together to at least get it out. And then after that, I did a second draft and streamlined the plot. And then after that, I found through Reedsy online a development editor and sent my story to him, and he helped me enhance my story a bit more. And so that's how I ended with my final draft now.
Okay, okay. Are you like self-publishing or traditional?
Yeah, I'm self-publishing.
Okay. Yeah, it's usually the most normal answer. Not many are traditionally.
Yeah, when I was looking at going through a publisher, I kept seeing horror stories of people scamming you out of money and stuff. So I figured just to be on the safe side, I might as well give the first one a shot at self-publishing.
Well, technically, if you are getting traditionally published, the idea is for them to pay you for it,
Yeah,
not the other way around, unless it's a hybrid publish. But that's another thing, and people usually know that before going there. So yeah, the moment they ask money, you should already know.
yeah, that was the impression I was getting with some of them.
Okay, okay. So how was the experience so far? Did you struggle in the process of making your book?
Few times there's always struggles with the plots of like where I wanted the characters to go next and how to make a full decent story that seems because I was trying to go for how you would say it. it's kind of a mix of historical with a little bit of sci-fi. So I was trying to make it seem plausible, not like ray guns in the 1800s style of absurd. It was trying to tie that together and make a nice cohesive story without something jumping around.
Okay. So, you mentioned sci-fi. So, was the work of another famous author inspire your work?
Not so sure author-wise, but it was...
Not, this doesn't count only on books. It's like everything.
Okay. I was going to say is my story mixes World War II with sci-fi and a little bit of weird stuff. I always took an interest in the History Channel stuff and some of the weird technologies the Germans tried out and designs and stuff. And there's with my current job, there was a time where I started wondering the whole like the Nazis Aryan race sort of thing, and that mixed with there's a type of alien in the UFO stuff that is the tall white. So that was the initial thought I kind of crossed of Nazis working with aliens. And
yeah, I do remember that on History Channel. They put aliens in everything. Well, it didn't make like a very trustful source, but at least it was fun to watch.
Yeah, that's usually how I took those and conspiracy theories and anything of the sort. I was like, might be true, might not, but it's a fun story at least.
Exactly. And the way they always narrate everything so dramatically, it was so heavy. But that's exactly the type of bombastic thing you have to do to promote that type of work.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would recommend you that if you ever do an ad campaign or something like that for publicity, try to do something with that kind of tone.
Yeah.
Maybe some weird ass graphics. I think it would be work better for this type of work. Well, depend of the tone. Is your work like a comedy or it's completely serious?
It's pretty mostly serious, yeah.
I think it can work too.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're not writing? What do you do for work?
I kind of fell into my job as a progression, but I work at a water bottling company that's local here. And so I started out initially just working on the line, throwing bottles on the line to get filled, and worked my way up through the machines. And eventually we needed a semi-truck driver for one of our routes. So now I drive a semi-truck. And I think that also kind of helped with my, my story writing stuff, because now I drive like an hour or two north and then an hour or two back. So I listen to Audible or some other sort of story out there, like creepy pastas and things like that. So a lot of story time in between.
Oh no, that's a completely fine. Many use many different types of inspiration. I mean, most people will say that they look for movies or they just traditionally read. So it's not necessary that you get ideas only on books, but it is recommended to read books for know how to say certain words.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, can you tell us a bit about your writing routine?
Mostly, for the most part, I'm not exactly sure how to explain it, but I try and set myself up some time here and there, at least like once a week to write something down at least. Actually, I don't know how my first book's going to sell, but I'm working on a sequel to it because at the very least, some of my friends that reviewed my first book wanted a sequel. So I've been working on that, and I worked on an outline this time around because the first time trying to streamline the process a little bit and keep myself on track. So now I set a little bit of time aside each week to work on my chapter outlines and develop each chapter. That's where I'm working with so far.
Oh, that's nice to hear. I was going to ask about that if you were already working on something else. Oh, so it's a sequel for this story. It's going to be a series?
It might be. I'm at least getting a sequel, and kind of have an idea for a third book, at least as an anthology sort of thing, since it's kind of taking a sci-fi spin on historical events. So it's at least a bit to work with there.
I can see that. Do you do anything in particular when you feel like stuck in a place or block?
Had that occasionally, and it's usually where I try and take a complete break from it and go catch a movie or do something to relax and I guess kind of dive more into the shows or the books that I currently have. I got a bad habit of reading 5 different books at a time, so I'll just rotate through them as I get bored with reading that story and try and jog some ideas around, I guess, through reading or listening to stories, and hopefully that clears up the writing block.
Okay. It's normal. Um, so you prefer to go directly to try something instead of just rest?
Yeah, pretty much. It takes place right after World War II, and it's military involved and all of that. And in the Bavarian Alps, I try to make something that sounded a little bit like a military operation or a backup plan sort of thing. And being in Bavaria, where the Alps are, that's how I came up with the Alpine Protocol, which is the name of the book. I guess I should probably mention that.
Okay. What was the name?
The name of the book is the Alpine Protocol.
Oh, okay. Certainly, it's not something I have seen before, I think.
Basically, tried thinking of anything I could have related to it and just started throwing the words onto a sheet of paper and then kind of just strung a couple together here and there, trying to think of what would sound kind of mysterious, but also interesting, and kind of fell into that one.
Okay. You mentioned it was like so it's aliens, futuristic aliens with Nazi times.
Yeah, it kind of ties into the idea of, like what I was saying with the History Channel shows, and even the Wolfenstein video game series, if you've ever seen that, where the Nazis found like sleeping aliens that their ship crashed years and years ago, and they start taking all their stuff apart and putting it to good use, at least use for them, not exactly good use, but
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to new writers starting right now?
don't know if it would sound like advice, but for me, it was the idea of, because like I said, I had the idea for my story rolling around in my head for like a year before I even started to try and write it. And I kept thinking up until that point, I'm not really a writer. And I've had friends that write full on books worth of poetry and stuff. So with that plot, I just put it down. So I would suggest if you got an idea, to just write it out. And even if you don't think it's going to be that great, keep writing it. And eventually you can, it's kind of like sharpening a knife. Eventually you get there, the more you work it.
Well, if your friends write full-on poetry, that's not easy at all. If they approve your work, I think it's for something. Okay. So what do you think is right now like your largest goal or dream as an author?
Right. Well, I guess for me, I never thought I'd be publishing a book, even if it's through Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I always thought that would be kind of that's something for people with big degrees and all that stuff.
I actually, as someone that has done already many shows, that's not true. I have seen many guests from humble places, so everyone can do that, especially these days when self-publishing make it possible.
I can also add, I never thought I'd be able to be on a podcast getting interviewed, so that's another pretty impressive feature for me.
Even the view authors had something to say, in my opinion. You finish a book, it doesn't matter after that. Many will say, I started a book like 3 years ago, but I stopped because work, and then I never continued, or something. There are many stories like that, but you actually finish one. Take that as a medal of honor, because it is something great. Many will say anyone can write right now but not everyone finish. Is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. So it is impressive,
Well, thank you.
of course. So, how much research do you think you do for your book?
Uh, I feel bad for saying it, but actually not that much because I've always been really fond of history. I even back in high school, history used to be the one class where I would always get a guaranteed A because cover everything from the U.S. history and the wars in Europe and a couple other areas along the way. So, and then watching the History Channel quite a bit, especially back when it was mostly history related stuff. So I had a lot to work with, and then the fortunate side of incorporating the sci-fi and the conspiracy theory stuff is you can kind of wing it with those. And but the really helpful part though is because there was some stuff that I did forget and some improvements that Martin Roy, he was the guy that was the development editor for this book, and he's a huge history buff plus the aliens and conspiracies. So we were kind of on the same page, and it was really helpful. Some of the suggestions he'd make to me, like I kept using DNA as a phrase in there, and he'd point out, he's like, no, they didn't have that phrase until like the 1960s, so you might want to switch that around. And I think, good point.
That's true. At that time, I have seen that issue with many stories about, you know, historicals about the past, and usually they wrote in a very modern way, so it doesn't feel real because they are using words or talking about or talking like if they were on, you know, in the 2000 or the 2000s and
Yeah.
two centuries ago.
Yeah, I had to keep catching myself from doing that with my book.
I mean, unless it's a comedy, that it can work. But in a serious story, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you mentioned your editor. So you have built a support network around, you know, like with editor, designer, and stuff already?
A little bit, yeah. I went through Reedsy and I found Martin Roy Hill. I keep calling Martin Roy, which I hope hope if he sees this, he'll understand at least. But he's even an author himself, but he's out of San Diego, and I hired him through Reedsy, and we had a lot of really good conversations. So it was kind of a by chance meeting somebody of a similar interest and mindset. And while he was editing my book, I actually found a few of his books on Audible, and so I listened to them. And pretty good author himself, so I even had to email him. I was like, "Yeah, I feel a lot more comfortable with some of your stories. That you're the right person to be helping me along with this story." Kind of the same vein.
I can see that. So, what advice would you give to those new authors that struggle with designers and editors?
Probably just to keep researching and researching until you find somebody you can feel comfortable with.
Okay, okay. So tell me, I think I forgot to ask, how long has been since you published your book?
It's actually due to come out May 7th of this year. So
Oh, it's not out yet.
yeah, not out yet, but it will be soon.
Okay, that's a very good. That's good to know because usually I add the link for people to buy on the video.
Oh, okay. I know the ebook on Kindle is up for pre-order right now.
Okay, that work. I can do that. Excellent. So tell me, how are you handling the marketing of your book right now?
That's still taking a little bit of research right now. But I at least have an author's page set up on through Facebook. But right now I'm still kind of searching through a few book marketers, and I think it was ever since I did through that search into Google or something like that that now I'm getting pretty much bombarded with all these different influencers and book deals and marketing deals and
Yeah, I can. I know it can be confusing.
a little bit.
Well, that's the consequence of self-publishing, sadly.
Yeah.
You have to deal with that. Have you thought on getting some help the same way you find your editor, looking for someone that could, put you in the proper path?
I was considering that. I had found a few people on the same website for that. They handle like marketing strategy and things like that. It was funny. It was before I had the whole finished book all set up to go onto Amazon. I'm actually taking a few college classes right now. I'm about to finish up a degree as it is, but I'd gone through a marketing class, and so before I finished the book, I was like, marketing's going to be easy. And then now that I'm here, it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be.
It never is. In paper, it always sounds like it is. So, tell me, do you have like any plans for, working in other genres other than sci-fi right now?
Uh, Kind of been thinking about it, but this is still relatively a whole new setup for me because I never thought I'd be, like I said earlier, I never thought I'd be a published author, and here I am with that. And so then I started thinking about other potential books, more of those ideas floating around in my head. So you never know what might happen in the future.
Okay, okay. Are you planning like to go to any event to promote yourself? Do you have some on your area?
That's something I'd be open to, but I haven't figured out that just yet. Still
Yeah,
working on that.
yeah, I can imagine. It's better to have the book first in your hand before you even try.
Yeah.
But give it a thought. I mean, there are people out there that set a desk in Walmart and just even outside and just to sell books. Anything can work on that. But obviously, it's a little bit better if you do it on an event with other people around that are
It's
there just to buy books.
a good idea. I
Well,
never even
it's one
thought about
effect.
that.
Huh? What is it?
Well,
Sorry.
I was just saying that's a good idea. I didn't even think about that, like setting up outside of Walmart or something.
Hey, it can work. I
Yeah,
have
if it works, it works.
I interview someone that actually do that every week. So okay, okay. Well, it's nice to wait a bit before making plans. So tell us, in which platforms we can get your book?
On Amazon, you can, and Barnes and Noble, they offer both of the physical book. I know Kindle does ebook as well, and that pre-order is up right now. Still working on getting the Barnes and Noble stuff completely set up, but
Okay, excellent. Yeah, Barnes and Noble is a little bit more complicated.
yeah.
So, do you want to share your social media to like promote yourself a bit?
Yeah, I can. On Facebook, I have Scott McNicol, author of the Alpine Protocol, and
Very specific.
figure might as well get to the point on it.
I
But
agree.
that's where I try and share all my updates, like that I just got my new cover back because my original cover. I was playing with a royalty free, found somewhere picture, and so I thought I'd get a little more professional. So I shared that with whoever might be following me so far, and any updates that come along the way is where I put it out.
Okay, okay. Well, Scott, I think that's all for now. Thank you so much for joining us today,
Thank you.
and thank you for your time. That was everything for today. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Dan Ricoveri, and we say bye to Scott McNicol. Bye, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
Scott really told us a lot today, especially two lessons that came to my mind. How a support network is key to success, as it's really important to make a solid team for support. He taught us that no matter how many tools we have on these days, self-publishing is not an easy way out, as it requires research and persistence, and that's something we all have to have in mind. Well, thanks for coming and joining us today. If you find this episode inspiring, like and subscribe, share this video, and give Markee Books a try in the link below. Have a nice day and see you next week.